The Galactic Council had gathered in full force for the first time in 300 cycles. Representatives from 47 species filled the enormous chamber, their forms ranging from towering crystalline beings to small floating clouds of conscious gas. The reason for this historic assembly was simple. Humanity had finally answered the invitation to join galactic civilization. After decades of observation and careful consideration, the young species from the Blue Planet had agreed to send their delegation. Ambassador Krelvos of the Marvani Dominion stood near the observation deck, his 4 eyes fixed on the main display screen. His species had been part of the Council for 10,000 cycles. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. They had watched young races arrive with grand fleets, desperate to prove their worth through shows of military might. The Marvani had long ago learned to measure a species not by their weapons, but by their wisdom. The display screen flickered to life, showing the approach vector from the Sol system. Krelvos leaned forward slightly, expecting to see the usual formation. New species always arrived the same way. They brought their largest warships. They arranged them in aggressive patterns. They wanted the Council to know they were powerful, that they deserved respect, that they should not be underestimated. But as the image resolved, Krelvos felt his primary heart skip a beat. There was only one ship. A single vessel, medium-sized by galactic standards, emerged from the jump point and began its slow approach toward the station. It carried no visible weapons. It flew no escort. It simply drifted forward through the void like a leaf carried on a gentle stream. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Delegates whispered to each other in dozens of languages, their translators working overtime to keep pace with the rising tide of speculation. Some laughed openly. Others shook their heads in what could only be described as pity. High Counselor Threnvac, the ancient leader of the Zirathi collective, raised one of his many appendages to silence the crowd. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying easily across the vast space. It appears the humans have made an error in judgment. Perhaps they do not understand our customs. Perhaps they believe this modest display is somehow appropriate. We should make allowances for their inexperience. More laughter followed his words. The Zirathi had always been condescending toward younger races. They believed their age gave them wisdom that others could not possess. But Krelvos did not laugh. Something about the approaching vessel made him uneasy. Something about its deliberate, unhurried pace suggested confidence rather than ignorance. The human ship continued its approach for several standard hours. During this time, the council members grew restless. Some began to leave, assuming the actual delegation would be delayed or that additional ships would follow. But no other vessels appeared. The single ship maintained its course, neither speeding up nor slowing down, as if it had all the time in the universe. When the vessel finally docked at the station, Krelvos made sure to position himself near the arrival bay. He wanted to see these strange creatures for himself. He wanted to understand what kind of beings would walk into the heart of galactic civilization with nothing but a single ship and apparently limitless confidence. The airlock hissed open, and 3 figures emerged. They were bipedal, remarkably similar to the Marvani in basic body structure, though smaller and more fragile in appearance. They wore simple clothing, dark and practical, with no ceremonial decorations or symbols of rank. The one in the center, a female by human standards, stepped forward and surveyed the assembled delegates with calm, dark eyes. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth vessel Prometheus. I speak for humanity. I thank you for your invitation and for your patience." Her voice was steady. There was no trace of nervousness, no hint of intimidation. She spoke as if addressing equals, which, given humanity's position as a newcomer, struck many delegates as arrogant. High Counselor Threnvac slithered forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the 3 humans. He towered above them, easily 3 times their height. His gesture was clearly meant to intimidate, to remind these small creatures of their place. Captain Chun, he said, drawing out each syllable as if speaking to a child. We welcome you to the Galactic Council. However, we must express our concern. You have arrived with only a single vessel, no fleet, no military escort. Many here interpret this as a sign of weakness or perhaps a lack of proper respect for these proceedings. Captain Chun did not flinch. She did not step back or lower her gaze. Instead, she smiled. It was a small expression, barely noticeable, but it carried a weight that made Krelvos take a step back. With great respect, High Counselor, you misunderstand. Our solitary vessel was not a sign of weakness. It was a statement. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background noise of translators and atmospheric processors seemed to fade. Every eye and sensory organ in the room fixed on the small human female. A statement? Threnvac's voice carried a hint of uncertainty now. Please explain. Captain Chun clasped her hands behind her back and took a slow, deliberate breath. Before we accepted your invitation, we studied your civilization. We learned your history. We analyzed the arrival records of every species that has joined the Council in the past 5,000 cycles. Without exception, they arrived with shows of force, armadas of warships, demonstrations of destructive capability. They wanted you to fear them because they believed fear equals respect. She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Humanity chose differently. We sent one ship because we did not need to prove anything. We sent one ship because we wanted you to understand something fundamental about who we are. We are not here to threaten. We are not here to intimidate. We are here because we believe in cooperation and building relationships based on trust rather than terror. A ripple of unease passed through the delegates. This was not how first contact was supposed to proceed. New species were supposed to be eager, desperate even, to demonstrate their value through displays of power. They were not supposed to lecture the Council on philosophy. But there is another reason, Captain Chun continued, her voice hardening slightly. A practical reason. You see, we studied your records very carefully. We know that in the entire history of the Galactic Council, no species has ever successfully threatened or attacked the station. The combined fleets of the member worlds ensure that any aggressor would face immediate and overwhelming retaliation. Sending 1,000 ships would have been pointless. No one can attack this place and survive. She smiled again, and this time the expression was different. There was an edge to it that had not been there before. So why waste resources on a military display that means nothing? We are humans. We are practical. We sent a single ship because a single ship was all that was required. Sending more would have been nothing but theater, and we prefer substance over performance. Krelvos found himself nodding slowly. He understood now. The humans had not made an error. They had done something far more dangerous. They had demonstrated intelligence. They had shown that they could think beyond the obvious, that they could see through the rituals and traditions that other species follow blindly. But High Counselor Threnvac was not ready to concede. His pride had been wounded, and the Zerathi did not take such things lightly. Pretty words, he hissed, looming even closer to Captain Chun. But words do not protect a species. Words do not win wars. If humanity is so practical, surely you understand that in this galaxy, power determines survival. And a species that arrives with one ship has very little power to speak of. Captain Chun did not move. She held the counselor's gaze without blinking. Is that a threat, High Counselor? The question hung in the air like a blade. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Even the floating gas beings stopped their constant movement. I am merely stating facts, Threnvac replied, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. Then allow me to state some facts of my own. Captain Chun reached into her pocket and produced a small device. She pressed a button, and a holographic display materialized in the air before her. This is our vessel, the Prometheus. It is not a warship in the traditional sense. It carries no heavy weapons, no armor plating, no conventional defenses. She manipulated the display, zooming in on specific components of the ship. What it does carry is something we call a quantum resonance engine. This technology allows us to destabilize the molecular bonds of any matter within a certain radius. The effective range is approximately 10,000 kilometers. The effect is instantaneous and irreversible. Everything within that radius simply ceases to exist. The silence that followed was absolute. We developed this technology not for war, but for mining. It allows us to break down asteroids into their component elements for easy collection. However, we are not so naive as to ignore its defensive applications. If anyone were foolish enough to attack our ship, they would find themselves facing a weapon that cannot be blocked, cannot be outrun, and cannot be survived. Captain Chun pressed another button, and the display vanished. She slipped the device back into her pocket as casually as if she had just shown them a family photograph. So you see, High Counselor, we sent one ship because one ship is all we need. We did not bring a fleet because a fleet would have been redundant. The Prometheus alone carries enough power to destroy every vessel in this sector. But we did not come here to make threats. We came here to make friends. She spread her hands in a gesture of openness. This is who we are. We prefer cooperation. We believe in building rather than destroying. But make no mistake, we are not weak. We are not naive. And we will protect ourselves if necessary. Our solitary vessel was not a sign of vulnerability. It was a statement that we have nothing to prove and nothing to fear. High Counselor Threnvac stepped back. For the first time in centuries, the ancient leader of the Zirathi collective looked uncertain. The delegates around him were equally stunned, their earlier mockery replaced by something that looked very much like respect. Krelvos stepped forward, his four eyes bright with admiration. "Captain Chun," he said, extending a clawed hand in what he hoped was a proper human greeting. "On behalf of the Morveni Dominion, I welcome humanity to the Galactic Council. I believe you will make excellent allies." Captain Chun took his hand and shook it firmly. "Thank you, Ambassador. We look forward to working together." As the chamber slowly returned to life, with delegates approaching the human delegation with newfound curiosity and respect, Krelvos reflected on what he had witnessed. For 10,000 cycles, he had watched species come and go. He had seen countless displays of power and aggression. But never before had he seen a species walk into the heart of galactic civilization and quietly, calmly, without raising a single weapon, make every other civilization in the room feel small. The humans had sent one ship, and in doing so, they had announced themselves more effectively than any fleet ever could. They were different, they were dangerous, and they were here to stay. The galaxy would never be quite the same again.